Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.
A very warm welcome to everyone. We are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Khari Edwards, who is the candidate for Brooklyn Borough President. Welcome, sir. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're so very welcome. So, Brooklyn is known for its diversity, but also faces significant inequality. What specific policies or initiatives will you prioritize to close the gap between Brooklyn's wealthier neighborhoods and underserved communities?
Yeah, putting that gap or closing that gap really takes, I think, three things. A leader who understands equity, inclusion, and engagement. The borough president's office, just from a capital budget standpoint, gets $45 million a year to support infrastructure programs. So when you have communities in South Brooklyn, East Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn that are facing these equity gaps, it's the responsibility, I feel, of the borough president to be in those communities and utilize those resources in particular to really close some of the gaps that we have. So we're looking at education. A lot of those schools have failing infrastructure, need software support. Our 10 safety net hospitals sit in the crux of Central Brooklyn. And every year, those hospitals are $150 million in deficit, and probably even more once Trump cuts Medicaid. And then we look at just food insecurity. We have 250,000 people that go to bed hungry at night. Only 152 food pantries. And again, a lot of those sit in communities that are underserved and under-resourced. So the respect of having an equitable community is really engaging in them, including them in the process, and not just spending time in the wealthier sides of the community.
Excellent. So as borough president, you will have to navigate issues related to housing, affordability, and displacement. How do you plan to balance Brooklyn's growth and development while ensuring that long-time residents aren't pushed out of their homes?
So this is something that keeps me up at night, specifically when we look at, to your point earlier, the equity issue. Central Brooklyn, South Brooklyn, communities like Canarsie pay the highest property taxes in the city of New York, next to South Bronx. What does that mean? Black and brown people who have worked hard to earn a home are now paying top property taxes indifferent to their counterparts in Park Slope. As borough president, using the advocacy of the office, using the bully pulpit that they say, having the backing of 2.8 million people will give me a great voice in addressing that. Most recently, I did a press conference about tax liens, asking the mayor and the governor to forgive tax lien sales for individuals who are 70 and over, retired on fixed income, or people who've just lost their homes. Because even though, the thing is build more, we have people who are losing their homes. So what are we building more? More shelters for homeless people? The reality of it is we have to address it from that standpoint. Secondly, the borough president has domain over land use. And some of the issues that we don't realize is that the average median income of New York City has Westchester and parts of Long Island wrapped into that. So that means the real average median income of Brooklynites are $55,000 a year. But according to the AMIs that the federal government looks at, they're almost $70,000 to $80,000 a year. So when you see these buildings that are being built affordable, they're automatically excluding 60% of the borough. So it's my responsibility as borough president that any new construction starts at a 30% AMI, which would allow folks, union workers, middle-class folks, to be able to afford those places. I wrote an op-ed about the middle child syndrome, because if you look at how housing and affordability are, you have to be ultra poor or ultra rich to live in Brooklyn, New York City. You can't be in a middle income area anymore. And so we have to really address that. And that's my commitment to really address that.
So perhaps, what we need is low-income housing because currently what they're saying is affordable really isn't.
Right. Our middle class has become low income. And when you look at the average DC 37 worker or 1199 worker, their salary starts somewhere between $35,000 to $40,000. These individuals have families. These individuals, have things that they need to take care of. We joke a lot about the eggs being a lot, but imagine now you're paying more than 30% of your salary to live. And by law, the expectation is that you're only supposed to pay 30% of your salary for room and board. Now we're paying 40, 50% of our salary, having higher Con Ed bills, having higher taxes, having higher groceries. And now that's why we're seeing our community dwindling, especially in Brooklyn.
Okay, so with rising crime rates in certain areas of Brooklyn, how do you plan to improve public safety without compromising the trust and relationship between law enforcement and local communities?
Yeah, so, this is well, let me back up. Yesterday, I was at the African American electeds and clergy breakfast, and Commissioner Tish was there. And she spoke about most of the crime overall has gone down in New York City. But where crime is still being committed are by our youth, 18 and under, right? And so when we have to look at the crux of public safety, we have to start giving our kids an opportunity to survive and thrive. And so there's a program that I wanted to implement once I win called Something to Do. And that Something to Do program is to utilize my money, my resources to pay for schools to remain open after hours. Schools that are not community schools, schools that already don't have after school programs. It almost would be like a beacon program. And what then I'm going to do is encourage not-for-profits to come in, utilize this free space, but bring our kids off the street. Give them something to do. Give them opportunities to be, engineers. Give them opportunities to learn how to do banking, something that will start to create a place of hope for them so that these are the ones who are perpetrating the crimes. And now we're giving them an opportunity to now be more, productive citizens. On the other side of it, too, I would love to introduce a bill for implicit bias training for new officers. We tend to get a lot of our police from out of boroughs, Long Island, New Jersey. And so in some cases, we don't realize that these folks don't understand how to hang out with Black folks or don't understand what a FET is. And so when they see us and they react to us a certain way, then it becomes a contentious situation. So I feel that if we could have NYPD go through implicit bias training ahead of time, that when they're in their communities, they're not reactive, they're more, proactive, they're more in partnership. I think then that's another place where we can maintain that relationship that you're talking about, police and community.
Okay, so your platform emphasizes empowering small businesses and local entrepreneurs. Can you speak more about your vision for supporting small businesses in Brooklyn, particularly in the current economic climate?
Yeah, so again, a lot of these things that I'm talking about are personal to me. My mom was a small business owner, entrepreneur, showed me how small business turns into generational wealth and creates community. And so when we see a lot of our small businesses that hire young people and keep them off the street or produce something important for the community suffering, the responsibility, I think, of government is to empower those. I recently learned about this thing called ETI, economically targeted investments. And so whenever you have one of your comptroller candidates on, they should really talk about it. But this is a fund that is funded by our 5 pension plans. And this is for communities, impacted communities, for housing, small business support. It's a $2.4 billion portfolio currently. And it's been open. The RFP has been open for the last 40 years. No one's been able to access it because no one's really known about it. So for a lot of small businesses going through it, first get your MWBE certification. New York State is still doing a great job in supporting that. but also to try to find ways to unlock this funding. Because again, if you're creating a community benefit by bringing taxes back into the community, supporting the community, this is a fund that you know, basically it's a small business loan that you pay back to the city of New York to make sure that the pension plan generates the kind of return that they need. So that you could look it up, economically targeted investments. Again, it is something that the New York City Comptroller is in charge of. Once the Comptroller receives your application, they review it with the 5 pension plans, and if they're on board, you know, you basically can get a loan that will save your business. But also too, we have to talk about buying locally again. We have to talk about, you know, whether it's a pizza shop, whether it's a laundromat, making sure community is engaged. And one of the things that I really want to do is bring back community and neighborhoods to Brooklyn. You know, there was a joke that I did on my Instagram about, you know, can you name 10 people on your block? And a lot of people wrote back and said they couldn't. And so when we talk about keeping small businesses alive, when we talk about keeping community alive, we have to become a community again. And it doesn't matter, you know, where your community is or what's your nationality or what your culture is. We have to have Brooklyn be a community again.
Okay, and I just want to mention, you know, you mentioned your mom. Your mom was very successful in a male-dominated industry.
Yes, yeah. She is my hero in so many ways. She's the one that got me into this mess of politics. But yeah, I've seen her navigate and negotiate. I've seen her cry. I've seen her succeed. You know, and really, I've seen her suffer. You know, as a small business, you know, you're around a lot of folks who give you opportunities, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're not there anymore. And these are all the people that you helped. And so I could just imagine what some of the small business owners are going through now. You know, I want to give a shout out to Joanne over at Brooklyn Commons, who's been doing a wonderful job trying to save a lot of these small businesses, but they need infusions of cash. They need infusions of support. You know, every small business is not a bar, a local bar, you know, or a coffee shop. Some of these small businesses really create generational wealth and a real economic ecosystem in our community.
Okay, so as a son of immigrants, how does your personal experiences shape your perspective on the current challenges faced by the immigrant communities in Brooklyn, and how do you plan to address those challenges as borough president?
Yeah, so, you know, it's so much different now than it was back then. You know, for us, me growing up in a Caribbean household, an immigrant household, it was just being able to get a piece of the pie. It was being able to fight for your respect and have folks feel that you're not coming to take their jobs and you're not coming to steal anything, but that you're able to be part of it. Now, you know, we're in danger. You know, now with Trump in office, you know, immigrants is a bad word. And so, you know, what I want to do in the borough president's office is have the office of my general counsel have an immigration office in Borough Hall. Because when I worked for Assemblyman Nick Perry, now Ambassador Nick Perry, he was the only office that I knew that was a non-federal office that did immigration support. And we would, you know, every Wednesday and Friday, Nick Perry would have, you know, my man Dalton Robinson support, you know, helping people with the immigration status. You know, that's what we're supposed to do. You know, everybody in the United States of America outside of the Native Americans are immigrants. And
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And so for us, you know, how could we turn our back on folks who, you know, my parents came here to get a better life, and thank God for them doing that. So I'm able to run for office. But we have to look at it from a point of danger that we didn't have before. It's not just deportation. It's them sending you to a whole other island that you're not from. That, you know, they're not understanding the contributions that you give. So the least thing that I could do, you know, as borough president is open up this immigration service office within there. Then I'm able to direct them out to support. I'm able to like protect them, you know, feeling that they can keep their confidentiality in a way that was really important. So, you know, we've gone away from, I guess, the immigration status of when my parents got here to now back to the Underground Railroad, where we have to hide in order to be free, which is really dangerous at this point.
It is. Given the evolving environmental concerns in Brooklyn, particularly with regard to climate change and sustainability, what steps will you take as borough president to ensure that the borough develops in an environmentally responsible manner while also creating green jobs and opportunities?
Yeah, well, the first thing for me is education, right? We have to. We've been a community of waste for so long, and now that we're trying to get into an environmentally green understanding, a lot of us don't know how to compost, right? A lot of us don't know how to separate our garbage. And we shouldn't get fines for it, but we should really get an opportunity to be educated in it. I'm somebody that has a fully electric car, but I did it because I didn't want to keep paying gas, right? I didn't know if it was an environmental thing or if it was more of an economic thing. But I feel that, as we continue to destroy our planet, as we continue to throw plastic on the ground and the fish that we eat are now, having plastic in it, I think that there's this education of explaining to people, especially those of us who have children, what are we leaving there for our children? So I think that, when we talk about rezoning in certain areas in the Kiwanis area or the Coney Island area, it has to be responsible rezoning. I think that we do, have to look at how our lead pipes are underground and make real infrastructure changes there. I think we just simply need to have more green space. We really need to just really plant more trees, whether it's for shading, whether it's for oxygen, whether it's just for life, and not just be this concrete jungle that Alicia Keys talked about so long ago, right? I think environmental sustainability can come clearly with education and real investments in our parks and things of that nature. Because, if you rip up some concrete, there's dirt under there. And that dirt is living, breathing soil. And so how about us investing in more green spaces, just as a minimum, and that's something that I'm going to commit to, utilizing again this $45 million a year capital budget to start to create those things, and also explain to people about solar. I got solar, y'all. Like, my Con Ed bill was low up until a couple weeks ago, but solar is something that we need to use Earth's resources to do that. And I think that the state can do a tremendous job, especially with what Trump is trying to do in terms of destroy our EPA, that again, we can put the power back into the states and the city and we become our own ecosystem.
Okay, so we've covered so many different topics and issues. How can Brooklynites get involved in your campaign and support your efforts to bring about the changes you envision for the borough?
Yep. So my name is spelled Khari, last name Edwards. My website is www.khariedwards.com. And my social media, which has been really good, I'm on TikTok, y'all, is Khari Edwards, Khari Edwards, NYC. And so I encourage you guys to follow me, drop messages in the chat. I would love folks to volunteer. This race is going. I'm running against an incumbent, but who I feel strongly and know strongly has not shown up for the communities that this radio represents. And it's time really that Brooklyn has a change. And as someone who is a child of Brooklyn, I've lived in this borough for half a century plus one. You guys do the math, but it's really important to now get out there, understanding that your vote does matter, your engagement matters, and if anything, look at what's happening to this world currently with this president. That if you don't vote, look what happens. And so I encourage everyone to go on the website. It's www.khariedwards.com. And like I said, my social media is the same thing. You just add NYC to that. And I look forward to, the support of my community. I feel very strongly about how we as a people have been ignored and how we should really still have a voice. Back in the day when Marty Markowitz and Howard Golden and Eric Adams they ran by going to the Black community, the Caribbean community, and no one's visiting us anymore. And so I'm visiting my people, and I need my people's support.
Okay, and just some final words, which you touched on, but I just want you to expand on a bit. What separates you from the incumbent, and why should you be the next borough president of Brooklyn?
Yes. So again, back to my three moral stances: equity, inclusion, and engagement. You know, when you're elected as a borough president, it's the entire borough. It's Park Slope to Brownsville, it's Greenpoint to Coney Island. You know, everyone has issues. Everyone has issues with trash. Everyone has issues with affordability. Everyone has issues with schools on whatever they may be. It's the responsibility of the borough president to be there. The borough president in its charter is the executive of the borough of Brooklyn to then in partnership work with the mayor of New York City, whomever that may be, to then bring the resources back to the borough. These relationships should not be adversarial. You don't have to agree, but they should be in a way where they create a better place for the borough and the community that you have. Also, I've been an executive. I was vice president of Brookdale Hospital for 8 years. I am currently the head of corporate and social responsibility for a company called Air Wellness. Being an executive is knowing how to partner, collaborate, and also disseminate information. And so we want to be a hub of information. We want to be obsessed with constituent services. And we want every community to feel that they are seen. And currently, every community is not seen. Every community is not equitably, taught or equitably engaged. And really for us, that's where this is about. This is about everyone having a voice in this particular administration that I'm looking to become.
Okay, and once again, your website, sir?
www.khariedwards.com. And the social media is Khari Edwards NYC.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back again.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.